Hi, and welcome to Wine Uncorked with Tower. My name is Gil Coolers. I'm a wine consultant at Tower Beer, Wine, and Spirits here in Atlanta, Georgia. And today we're going to talk about the history of corks. But before we get started, let's talk a little bit about ancient history and how wines were originally stored. But before we go there, we're going to talk about another container called Amphora. They were the methods that folks used to make and store wines. And there are a lot of problems with amphora that we have been dealing with for thousands of years. For one, they're very hard to clean. They're made of clay and prone to cracking. But most importantly, as soon as you take 1 cup of wine out of a container, an amphora container, you have the problem of oxygen. And as many of you probably know, if your wine stays in contact with oxygen too long, we're going to have vinegar, much less pleasant than a glass of wine. Then, around 400 years ago, we had the introduction of corked wine bottles. And it's not so much that folks didn't know about the properties of the oak tree that produces corks like the one I'm holding right here. It's that they didn't have the technology to faithfully make bottles with the exact dimensions in the neck. So each cork would fit in very nicely to each bottle. Or the trees that produce corks, it's that the bottle technology was not really there until around the 1600s, when they could reliably produce bottles that have uniform holes in the top that you can put the corks into. And while this was a great invention 400 years ago, there are some problems with corks, and I'm going to focus on one in particular. And that has to deal with a compound called 2,4,6-trichloroanisole, otherwise known as TCA. When cork is harvested from the oak trees generally found in Portugal, Spain, and the southern parts of France, there's oftentimes mold on the bark. And when this comes in contact with the solutions that are used to process the bark, the compound TCA is produced. And why is TCA a problem? Well, humans can smell TCA at very, very low levels, on the order of 7 parts per, not million, not billion, 7 parts per trillion. And what does TCA smell like? Well, in the higher levels, it smells like damp cardboard or perhaps a moldy basement. And those are very obvious to just about anyone's. The more insidious problem with TCA is that when it is in low levels that are practically imperceptible, it provides a big wet blanket that sits over the aromas and flavors of the wine. So you go from having a wine that you thought was going to be very exciting and delicious to a wine that was merely okay. This problem came to a head like I said, in the year 2000, when winemakers in New Zealand said that they have had enough. And we're going to talk about the popularity of New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, Stelvin Screw Caps, in the next episode on the history of corks. Thanks for watching, and thanks for shopping at Tower.